Drawing and graphite. And so literally I had to buy like 5 or 6 of these tubs of masking fluid, and I put it on my paintbrush and I made all of these marks individually with the masking fluid.
Wow.
And then I had like how did I do this? I guess I just like dusted powdered graphite on top of the whole thing, but like in square sections, like one section at a time, so it was more uneven. Over the whole thing.
You sprayed it?
No, I just like with a brush. I had the powdered graphite and I kind of just like brushed it on top. And then after I did that, I peeled up each like mark with masking fluid and then the paper. It's just underneath. But before I did any of that, you can see there's kind of a drawing underneath it already. There is a drawing underneath it already. I just covered it up with the masking fluid and the graphite. So there's 10 years worth of marks. So 1 mark for every day in 10 years is what that is. Yeah. And I don't know how long it took, but a very long time. I actually have 2 of these that are the same size and the same number of marks. And the other one looks very different from this one. Sure, yeah, this is an example of how my practice spans across different mediums, because I actually consider all of these to be drawings, even though technically they're really not. So the 3 over here are risograph prints, a series of 3 of those. These are monoprints that I used graphite and water to create. So they're using drawing materials, but it's using a printing process to make them. And then these 3 look like more traditional drawings, but it's actually graphite on paper and also carbon transfers on paper as well, which I could talk more about that if you want me to.
Yeah, what is
that? So just like as a general statement, the process of making my work is equally as important to me, if not more important than the product of like what comes from that process. And so making these drawings was a lot about the process. And so I took carbon paper, which is basically like what they use to make carbon copies of like letters, and I don't even know what else they use it for. But it's paper that has like carbon on the back of it, and you put it face down, and then you either draw on top of it or like press something into it and then peel it up, and it makes an impression of whatever you pressed into it on the paper below it. And so what I did was I used the carbon paper and kind of blindly like used my fingers and my fingernails and created like motions on top of it, and then peeled it up, and the marks you see are kind of just the motions of my hands moving across the paper.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably like the one word that I could use as a connective thread throughout everything that I do, for sure. I think I could call it coincidental, but I think it's actually deeper than that. I think it came about in grad school. I was going through like a lot of changes that I didn't necessarily want or like give permission to, and like a lot of things about my life like really fell out of my control. and I was dealing with like loss and trauma and like sadness and, you know, all the things that like life throws at you and you don't have control over any of it and you just have to make the best of it. And so I realized that I have, you know, this issue with like taking that in and like being okay with it. And that kind of just like naturally came out in the work that I was making because it's what I was thinking about. And I think it just became interesting to me and it felt genuine, and like that's something that I just always deal with because I love having control and like being structured, and that makes me feel comforted and it makes me feel good and easy. But then also on the flip side of that coin, like realizing that's something that I can never achieve, you know? And everything is impermanent, and just like how do you rectify those two things together? I use the grid imagery a lot, and I think it's like mainly for that purpose. It's to like represent that structured side, like that's something that I can control. And what I like to do, I think this is another kind of connective thread in my work, is to kind of like set processes in motion, like have an idea about what I want to make and what materials I'm going to use and how I'm going to put them together, and what kind of process, like what the process itself is going to look like, but then knowing that I don't have full control over what the result is like fully going to look like. So I like to use processes that are like actually out of my control a little bit, and the materials kind of innately interact in a way that they're going to come out the way they come out, and I can't really do anything about it. And so I like to combine that with this image of the grid, which is like something that contains it, something that is structured. It's kind of like a duality. You know, time is this driving force in our lives, and it's something we can't stop. It takes us where we don't want to go or where we do want to go, and it's there all the time. It's like we have no control over it. And it's a force that we don't really ever like stop to think about, I feel like. We're just kind of in it always. And the same way that it's just the same way I think about impermanence. Like, I want to grab hold of it. I want to understand it. I want to slow it down. I want to, you know, make moments something to remember or to document and not just pass by without a word about it. I think I always have this underlying desire to like take a snapshot almost, but with drawing, of like a process that's fleeting or like a moment in time that I'm never going to get back again. And I think that's also like another reason why process is so important to me. I relish in it. I experience it. I love the process. And I know that nobody else is going to experience that either. And that's not part of what you get necessarily when you look at the drawings that I make. But it's part of me and it's important to me. And I think in a lot of my drawings, you can at least see the labor behind it, which is tied to the process, but it's not the process. And so I like to incorporate and figure out ways to, you know, attempt to document those things. Like with these risograph prints, it's a real kind of like temporary object that existed. I don't have this anymore. I scanned it in. The risograph took an image of it, kind of like a photograph. It documented it, and then it moved twice, and then it disappeared. So, and I even experimented for a little while. I haven't done this in a long time, but I experimented a little while with like actually using time as a medium, with like putting graphite inside of ice and like ice cubes, and letting them melt onto surfaces and then recording the process that way. So whatever's left after the fact is the graphite that's on the surface that I left it on. It's like an imprint of literally this process that time allowed. So I definitely think about that all the time, and I think the ice was a way for me to try to record a process. These are ways that I'm trying to record a process. I'm like always grasping for it, for sure.
Where do you see like the future of your work going, or where do you want, or what do you want to do in the future, I guess?
So many good questions, Millie. You're making me like think about my life. What is this? I mean, I want to make art forever. Like, it's just so cheesy, but like it's part of me. Like, it's how I process. It's how I understand the world around me. Whenever I go without it, there's like this palpable tension in the air around me wherever I go, and I'm like, okay, I gotta go make some art now. I have a lot of inspirations in my life, just in general. I think my husband, honestly. I know that's super cheesy, but he's an artist too, and he just like inspires me every day. Our art is very different, like worlds apart. But just like his motivation and drive to do what he does just kind of like keeps that spark going in me too.